Monday, 10 August 2026. 3 Asia-Pacific AI stories before your first coffee. Beijing released a sweeping consultation draft covering security obligations for large data processors, while simultaneously issuing a binding national standard for autonomous driving data handling, marking 2 parallel regulatory moves in a single week. Singapore's monetary authority signaled that supervisory guidance for agent AI in financial services is close to publication, adding another Southeast Asian jurisdiction to the active rulemaking column. Meanwhile, Australia's long-promised voluntary AI safety standards have still not reached national cabinet, leaving Canberra visibly behind the regulatory pace set by its regional peers. Why it matters? The gap between Asia's fastest movers and its laggards is now measurable in policy output, not just rhetoric. Builders deploying foundation models across multiple APAC jurisdictions face a patchwork, where China and Singapore are writing enforceable rules, while Australia remains stuck at the consultation stage. For capital allocators, the signal is that compliance cost curves in Northeast and Southeast Asia are steepening faster than in the Anglosphere markets that once led on tech governance. The second-order effect to track is whether Canberra's delay pushes Australian AI startups to anchor their compliance frameworks to Singapore's or China's standards by default, simply because those are the ones that exist. Multinationals operating across the region should expect divergent timelines for at least the next 12 to 18 months. So Seoul and Taipei have overtaken Tokyo on exports for the first half of 2026, and the gap is almost entirely silicon. South Korea shipped $496.3 billion and Taiwan $416.7 billion in the period, against Japan's $384.4 billion. Korean semiconductor exports alone grew 162.6% to $192.4 billion in 6 months, already exceeding the full year total for 2025, while Taiwan's AI server components drove a similar surge. Japan's export base still grew, but its strength sits in upstream materials and fab tooling rather than finished chips. Why it matters? The scoreboard confirms that AI infrastructure demand is rewriting Asia's trade hierarchy in real time. Korea has raised its 2026 growth forecast to 3.0%, and Taiwan projects 9.64% GDP growth, while Japan cut its fiscal 2026 outlook to 0.9%. Capital allocators tracking the region should note that Korea's July alone hit $98.89 billion in exports, with semiconductors at $41.01 billion and computer shipments up 404% year-on-year. Japan is not losing, it is owning further upstream in materials and lithography tooling, but those revenues book against fab construction cycles, not the monthly chip shipment cadence that moves headline numbers. The second-order effect to watch: whether Korea and Taiwan's silicon dominance pulls more AI model training and inference workloads into Northeast Asia's data center corridor. Now, Tokyo's government pension investment fund, the world's largest, posted a record 24.09 trillion yen, roughly $153 billion, gain in the April to June quarter, lifting total assets above 300 trillion yen for the first time. The 8.2% quarterly return was driven by foreign equities returning 16.9% and domestic equities returning 14.5%, while domestic bonds lost 1.1%. GPIF runs passive index allocations and does not pick individual AI stocks, meaning the record result is a reflection of AI concentration inside global benchmarks, rather than any deliberate positioning by the fund. Why it matters? GPIF's windfall exposes a structural risk that stretches well beyond Japan. The fund's passive mandate means its fortunes now rise and fall with a handful of AI megacaps it never chose to own. And the same dynamic applies to public pension and sovereign wealth vehicles in Korea, Singapore, Malaysia, and Taiwan. Those economies already carry heavy exposure to AI through semiconductor and hardware export earnings, so their national balance sheets are now correlated to AI on both the asset side and the income side. Capital allocators across Asia-Pacific should be stress-testing what a sharp rotation out of AI leadership does to fund solvency and fiscal assumptions simultaneously, because that double exposure has no precedent at this scale. That is your AI in Asia briefing for today. Stay sharp, build well, see you tomorrow.